light a cigarette, especially during the speedboat ride when we're going like 35, 40 miles an hour into the wind and maybe getting splashed a little, that's actually kind of impressive. It's impressive that you can light a cigarette in those conditions, but please don't do it. It's only an hour and 15 minutes. If you can't go a whole hour and 15 minutes without nicotine, come talk to me after this. We'll hug it out. We'll talk about your life choices and where you went wrong. But you can do this. One more safety related thing, and that's our life jacket. Yeah, our life jacket. There's only one. $20. It can be all yours. So if you want $20? 20, all right, $30. I'm starting an auction here. 30, 40, 40. Nobody afford it? Okay. Well, I can see some of you looked under your seats, and I'm not fooling anybody. Of course, there's more than enough of these to go around. But by all means, if you still want to give me money, that's fine. But these are for emergencies only, and they are Velcroed underneath every single seat. But please leave them there unless it's an emergency, in which case we'll use them. But if you don't know how to put one of these on, I'm required by the U.S. Coast Guard to do a demonstration. So here we go. So we appear to be waiting for the Chicago Harbor locks to open up right here. That's what's going on. This building on our right that looks like sort of shaped like an air traffic control tower. It's really more of a boat traffic control tower. This is where they operate the Chicago Harbor locks from. And the locks are the only way to get directly from Lake Michigan to the Chicago River, which flows through the middle of the city. The reason Chicago became such a big city is because you can get from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, and when they dug the Illinois-Michigan Canal in the 1840s, then that connected the Chicago River to the Mississippi. So when I say these locks are the only way to get directly from Lake Michigan to the Chicago River, there are other ways to do it. This is just the only way to get directly from Lake Michigan to the Chicago River. We could also go about 20 miles south and a little bit east and get on the Des Plaines River. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Calumet River. The Calumet River, has anybody ever driven across the Chicago Skyway going to Indiana? A couple of you? It's really cool. It's super high up. All these old steel mills and bridges from 100 years ago are down there. But the Skyway crosses over the Calumet River, which takes you, if you took the Calumet, you could get to the Sanitary Shipping Canal, which connects to the Chicago River. Or there's the really, really roundabout long way to get from this lake to that river over there. We could go about 300 miles north up to Mackinac Island, where Lake Michigan connects to Lake Huron, then take Lake Huron down to the St. Clair River, which goes past Detroit and connects you to Lake Erie. Then from there, get on the Welland Ship Canal, which goes around Niagara Falls, because you can't go up Niagara Falls because it's a waterfall. Then from there, that you take Lake Ontario out to the St. Lawrence Seaway, which goes along the U.S.-Canada border to the Atlantic Ocean. Then you take the Atlantic Ocean down south around Florida into the Gulf of Mexico, and go up the Mississippi River from New Orleans all the way up to St. Louis, Missouri, where the Mississippi River meets the Illinois River. Take the Illinois River back across Illinois to the Des Plaines River, to the Sanitary Shipping Canal, and back to the Chicago River.
4 weeks.
You guys are up for that? We could cancel your plans for the next year. It'll take a long time. This boat's fairly fast, but that would take a while. Also, you'd have to throw down. You don't have to chip in for gas, because this boat has two 18.5 liter V12 Detroit diesels in it, so it doesn't get good mileage. It's like, I don't know if you know anything about it. But engines, they're both a little bit bigger than what you'd find in like an 18-wheeler. It's got two of those. Couple things. I'll talk more about the locks when we're in there, but from here, we've got a pretty good view of the Chicago Lighthouse out there, which was built, well, the tower part was built in 1893, and then they added the house part in 1919. So the tower part of the lighthouse is 128 years old. The house part is 102 years old. It's still a functioning lighthouse, but it hasn't had a lighthouse keeper living in it since 1979. Ever since then, they automated it, so it just has a sensor, that detects how much light there is, and if it detects that it's dark or foggy, it turns on automatically. So the only time people go there now is to change the light bulb. That's about it. One of my favorite things about it, though, there was a guy who, after the lighthouse was automated in 1979, there was a guy named Sterling Bemis, which is a weird name. He wanted to live there just for fun, because he was sort of a young, rich, eccentric businessman type. And he lived there. He made a deal with the Coast Guard, who's in charge of the lighthouse, and made a deal to rent it in the 1980s, just to live there because he wanted to. Here's the best part, though. He got kicked out after a couple years for partying too hard. I don't know how you do that at a lighthouse when you have no neighbors. Maybe there was skinny dipping involved. I don't know, but this is a commercial passenger vessel by U.S. Coast Guard standards, so we get routine Coast Guard inspections where the U.S. Coast Guard comes on board and checks our life jackets, makes sure we have enough, checks our fire equipment and such. And I was talking with one of the Coast Guard guys, and he's like, "You ever talk about the lighthouse?" I say, "Of course, you know." And he said, "You ever talk about Sterling?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, I arrested Sterling back in 1986. I was like, "Oh." I wanted to ask him more, but he had stuff to do. Alright, so we got boats coming out of the locks, which means soon we'll get to go in. One thing real quick, before we lose sight of it, obviously Navy Pier's right here where we came from, but in between us and Navy Pier, you see there's a bunch of rocks and sticks poking up out of the water. That used to be another pier. So that's between us and Navy Pier, there's a bunch of rocks and stuff. That used to be a smaller fishing pier called Dime Pier. It was built in 1920, and it was called Dime Pier because you used to be able to pay a guy 10 cents a dime to row you out so you could fish off of it for the day. Here's the thing though, sometimes they charge you more than 10 cents to row you back, because otherwise you gotta swim for it. That's how they get you. But anyway, Dime Pier sort of fell apart in the 1960s, and instead of trying to fix it, the city just sort of let it fall back into the lake. So that's the remnants of Dime Pier is what we're seeing there. We got to go ahead of the other boats because we are a commercial passenger vessel. Did you guys see that stoplight there? It was yellow. Yellow means go. Duh. Don't you know how to drive? Yellow means go for us. Commercial passenger and emergency boats get to enter on yellow, and then it'll turn green, and that'll let the recreational boats go in. So what's going to happen here is Eric has this harpoon-looking thing there. It's not a harpoon, it's not that exciting, but he's going to attach this to the wall on the right side, the starboard side of the boat. So everyone's sitting along this railing. I just need you all to keep your arms inside. That's okay. Just don't put your arm between the boat and the wall. That's what I'm trying to say. It's usually little kids will like want to reach out and touch the wall, but we're going to make contact with that wall, and it could crush your little arm. So don't do that. Alright, so there's a person up in that tower there operating the locks that we just passed. Now, guys, take a look ahead of us here. See how the water on the other side of this gate looks significantly lower? That's not your mind playing tricks on you. That water is about 5 feet lower than the water that we're in. So once us and all the other boats are in the locks and secured to the wall, the person in that tower there is going to use their control panel to make the doors behind us shut, and then we'll be trapped. for a little while. And the doors in front of us right here will open up. And approximately 1 million gallons of water will pour forth out onto the Chicago River. And then this boat will drop down about 5 feet. And when I say drop down, it's not like, whoa, it takes a few minutes, but it's a really cool process to see. And we're actually going to get to see it happen in reverse on our way back out, because we're going to have to come back through here later on. So once that water joins the Chicago River will then flow away from the lake. Our river flows away from our lake. Does that sound weird to anybody? Because yeah, our river flows away from our lake just as nature did not intend. Because that doesn't happen in nature. Rivers flow into larger bodies of water. The reason our river flows the wrong way is because we did that to it. We made that happen 121 years ago. It was actually the very beginning of the 20th century. January 2nd of 1900 is when we finished reversing the flow of the river. And the reason that we wanted to do that was so that instead of all of our pollution from our river flowing into the lake where our drinking water comes from for the city, we wanted our pollution to flow away from the lake and towards St. Louis, Missouri. Is anybody from St. Louis on the boat? No? Okay. Sorry about that. Not my idea, man. It's 121 years ago. So, we weren't trying to specifically spite St. Louis. It's not like we were saying, like, here, have our trash water, St. Louis. St. Louis just happens to be the next major city that's downriver from us. So in the 1800s, Chicago was the meatpacking slaughterhouse capital of the world. We had the nickname Hog Butcher of the World. They're the Union stockyards down on the south side. And back then, it's the Industrial Revolution. There's no such thing as environmentalism. There are no restrictions on what couldn't get dumped into public waterways. So all these slaughterhouses and other industries would just dump their industrial waste into the river because they could, because it was an easy way to get rid of it. Like, oh, this animal carcass has gone bad. We can't turn this into meat. Put it in the river. So raw sewage, we don't want that. Put it in the river. Here's some animal body parts that we can't turn into edible meat. Put them in the river. We hadn't invented hot dogs yet, I guess. But anyway, so that used to flow into Lake Michigan, where our drinking water comes from. And people drank that water and started getting diseases like dysentery, cholera, typhoid fever, all the stuff that, if you remember the old Apple computer game Oregon Trail, it's all the stuff you died from in that. So, right. So what we did is, first we built some water intakes. There's these things that we'll see later on called water cribs that are a few miles out. They're these weird little islands that collect the city's drinking water. And although the lake is much cleaner now than it was 100 years ago, we still use them because they're there, and why not? But as the city grew, so did the pollution, and eventually the rancid water made its way out to the water intakes. So we had to do something else. And that thing was reverse the river. Now how we reverse the river is we dug a canal about 20 miles southwest of here called the Sanitary and Shipping Canal, which is a 28-mile-long canal that connects the Chicago River to the Des Plaines River. And in between those two rivers, there's a subcontinental divide. And we all know Illinois is a very flat state. We're not known for our hills. We have 0 mountains in Illinois. But all the same, there is a slight change in elevation between those two rivers. So the Chicago River is slightly higher up in elevation than the Des Plaines River, which flows south towards the Mississippi and meets up with the Mississippi outside St. Louis.
Open the gate yet. We're not going down yet.
So when they dug a canal and connected those two rivers, water flowed downhill from the higher up river to the lower down river, and it reversed. And that's St. Louis, by the way, they saw what we were doing. They saw us starting to dig this canal that was going to reverse our river and send our pollution towards them. They weren't thrilled when they saw what we were doing, which, by the way, we started digging the sanitary canal in 1892. When they saw what we were doing, they weren't going to They threatened to sue us. They were going to take us to court. And when we heard that St. Louis was going to sue us, our reaction was to dig the canal faster. Get it done. So, fast forward 8 years. The year is 1900. The sanitary canal's finished. It's ready to go, but there's no water in it.
Now we're going down for sure.
St. Louis, by the way, still hasn't taken us to court because the wheels of justice turn very slowly. You know, it's the Supreme Court because it's between two states, Illinois and Missouri. So it's in the process of going through, but it's still not. We're not actually in court. Before St. Louis ever got us to court, the police chief of Chicago, the mayor, and a group of trustees went to the dam that was holding the river back from flowing into the canal and reversing. They went to the dam in the middle of the night with dynamite and blew it up, reversing the river. And that's kind of how we do things here in Chicago. Shady, do it at night, make it look like an accident. Like, oh, looks like the dam fell down a flight of stairs. Whoops. Oh, check this out. If you guys want to look, the doors are closing right now behind us. I mean, it might be hard for some of you to see. Doors closing. Doors closing. The next stop is Clark and Lake. Doors open on the left at Clark and Lake. Transfer to brown, orange, green, pink, and purple line trains. Yeah, who rides the CTA? So check it out, the doors are going to open right in front of us here. Y'all see that?
Look at this road.
So now we're going to start to drop down.
That shit's going down fast.
I want y'all to see that. The reason they only open the gates a little bit at first is because you can see how much lower the water is on the other side of the gates there. If they opened them all at once, we'd be sending a 5-foot wave towards the city. Imagine if you were some poor guy out there on a kayak and all of a sudden this 5-foot wave just comes barreling at you. Oh no! Yeah. So we do, and also we'd be surfing on top of that wave too, which sounds fun in theory, but it probably wouldn't be. So we reversed the river. That's all fine and dandy. By the way, St. Louis, we eventually did go to court with them, and the Supreme Court rules in our favor because between us and St. Louis, there's enough distance to where all of our nastiness that we were dumping into the water sort of dissipated and really didn't affect the water that much by the time it got all the way down to St. Louis. Plus, St. Louis was polluting the water just as much as we were, so the Supreme Court said, well, nah, you can't really blame them for that, you know. But, oh, it's Ellie the Lock Dog. Y'all see her? The lock's got a dog.
There she is.
Her name's Ellie. Her job is to scare away birds, which is great, because that's a great job for a dog to have. Because I remember a few years ago, my first year when I worked here, it was a few years ago, there used to this wall was just covered in seagulls roosting and geese and seagulls being obnoxious and making a mess. It was especially rough during mating season when I had to give this tour to a group of junior high kids, and there's seagulls mating on the wall there, and I have to just act like nothing's happening.
Look at the water line.
This whole thing. So I'm thankful for
What's on top of that?
Now, we reversed the river, that's all fine and dandy, but why are the locks here? Why are we dropping down 5 feet? Because remember, we used a canal to reverse the river. The whole reason for these locks is really just to control how much water flows out of the lake. Because if these locks weren't here, the river and lake would be the same height, same depth. It would just be flowing non-stop, 24/7, 365. And that's a lot of water. So now instead of the Chicago River feeding water into Lake Michigan, it's taking water away. And granted, there are it's not like this is the only river that feeds water into Lake Michigan. There are other rivers. But still, this is a significant source of water for the lake. Now, instead of adding, it's subtracting. And it started affecting the water level, the levels of Lake Michigan. It started making the water levels drop. And people who share like all the lakes with us, because all the Great Lakes are connected, namely Canada, started noticing, and they sued us. Canada sued us. The nicest people in the world, Canada, like, hey, Chicago, maybe don't take so much darn water out of the lake there, but you know, it's like getting yelled at by a Canadian. They're pretty laid back normally. So in 1936, we built these locks here. So now water only leaves the lake when boats pass through. Before we built these locks, so from 1900, when we reversed the flow of the river, to 1936, when we built these locks, when the lake was just free-flowing into the river non-stop, we were taking about 10 billion with a B, gallons of water out of the lake every day. Now that we have the locks, this is only 1 million gallons every time boats pass through. So even if these locks open and close all day long, letting boats through, it's not going to be anywhere near 10 billion gallons of water, let alone not even close to 1 billion, you know. So it's just to control the water flow. If you're wondering about depth, we're dropping from about 30 feet of water down to around 25. The river is about 25 feet deep, give or take, because, you know, it's uneven. If you look under the American flag here, you see there's a red flag with a white castle on it. That's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers flag. They didn't build the locks, but they do operate and maintain them. The White Castle on the flag is not affiliated with the White Castle that makes hamburgers. Those are two different White Castles. Not related. Now you can see we've dropped down and the gates are opening in front of us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jurassic Park. I don't know what dinosaur sounded like. Nobody knows. Could have sounded like that. Alright, so I'll talk. I'm sure many of you who haven't been here in a few years are curious about this blue, shiny skyscraper in front of us with looks like it's missing a floor near the top. I will talk about that when we're a little closer to it, because we are going to go right past it. But for now, I want you to look just to the left of it. There's a few skyscrapers we're not going to see again on this ride. One of them, you can only see the top of it. It's got a very sharp point on top, and the top floors kind of do a staircase thing. That's the 7th tallest building in Chicago, Prudential Insurance Tower number 2. You can't see the old Prudential building from here because it's behind those other buildings, but that was built in 1990. Just to the left of Prudential Tower 2, there's a white, boxy skyscraper with the windows make sort of vertical lines going up and down. It's almost like a giant stick of butter that got scraped by a fork, maybe. But that's the 4th tallest building in Chicago, the Aon Center. Aon Insurance, which used to be the Standard Oil building when it was built back in 1973, and then it was the Amoco building in the 80s for a while. You can't go to the top of there unless you work there. It doesn't have like a public observation deck like a lot of other skyscrapers do. But that's changing soon. Word on the street is they're gonna, so we can go. They're gonna build a glass elevator that goes up the side of that building on the outside. Not for everybody. Some people, I say that and they're like, ugh. Yeah, imagine that, a glass elevator going all 1,136 feet of the Aon Center. Alright, so now we're on the Chicago River. In just a moment here, we're going to go under Lakeshore Drive Bridge up ahead of us here. This is the busiest bridge in Chicago in terms of number of cars crossing it every day. There's a really good law that's associated with Lakeshore Drive. It's called the Free and Clear Act of 1908. And what the law does is it makes it illegal to build private businesses or residences on land east of Lakeshore Drive. So, because of that law, Chicago's lakefront is all public. It's public parks, public beaches. You got Navy Pier, which is for everybody to enjoy. Along to a little to the south, you got the planetarium, the aquarium, the field museum. you can ride a bike or walk along the entire lakeshore, and it's all public. There's no private beaches, no factories, and it's all thanks to that law. As I'm saying this though, there's the only contradiction is over to the right. From this angle it maybe looks like a flask, from a different angle perhaps a fidget spinner. This is the only private building east of Lakeshore Drive. It's Lake Point Tower. 99% of this building is residential. It's a bunch of condos and apartments. The only public part of this building is a circular thing on the top, which is a French fusion restaurant called Cité. The reason I got away with building this here, in spite of that law, free and clear law, the lawyers found a loophole. So the law says you can't build private structures on land east of Lakeshore Drive. But technically this is landfill. The lawyers said, we're not going to build it on land, it's landfill, and they won. And that was built there back in 1968. And the reason this is landfill is because of the Great Chicago Fire. You all heard of that? In 1871, the city burned to the ground. Nobody really knows what caused the fire. They said it was a cow kicking over a lantern. That's just a story. But after the fire, they took all the rubble and debris and pushed it into the lake, and it became miles and miles of landfill that they were able to build on top of. So after Lake Point Tower was built, the city changed the law to include landfill. So the only thing that was squeezed through that loophole before it was shut. All right, now. Most of these towers on our left are residential, pretty much almost all of them. This neighborhood's called Lakeshore East, and it's just slightly out of my price range. Just a little bit, yeah. This brand new skyscraper that I mentioned earlier, it's got 3 different sections of different heights, and I love how the sides kind of subtly undulate. They wave in and out ever so slightly. Very beautiful building. It's less than a year old, but it's already managed to change its name 3 times. It was originally, when it was under construction, it was the Wanda Vista Tower, then it was the Vista Tower, but now it's finally the Regis Tower, or St. Regis Tower. It's the 3rd tallest building in Chicago at 1,198 feet, 100 floors. Actually, 101 floors. The top 60 are condos, the residential. The bottom 40 floors are a hotel. But notice there's also one floor that's empty. There's a big gap up near the top. That gap's actually there to allow high winds to blow through the building rather than the wind hitting it, making it sway. So it's aerodynamic. The Regis Tower is currently the tallest building in the world, designed by a lead female architect. Her name is Jean Gang, and she's actually from the Chicagoland area. She's from Belvedere, which is about an hour west of here on I-90. Jean Gang also designed the Aqua Tower, which, if you look to the left, you can't see all of it because the Swiss Hotel's kind of in the way, which is that triangle-shaped building. But see this building on the left where every floor has a white, curvaceous, wavy balcony? That's the Aqua Tower. It's built back in 2010, and Jean Gang also designed that one. What's interesting is the balconies are actually there. They actually help deflect wind. The balconies are designed in such a way to deflect wind. So Jean Gang thought, okay, if the wind's coming around these buildings like this balcony on this floor has to be shaped this way so that it makes the wind bounce off like that. Which I've never heard of anybody else doing that with balconies. It's pretty innovative. Now on the right, there's an old Art Deco skyscraper that has a yellow onion-shaped dome on the roof. That's the Intercontinental Hotel. And what I love about this building is the top floor where that yellow dome was originally supposed to be used as a blimp docking station, or Zeppelin dirigible. The idea was an employee would climb that metal ladder, tie the blimp to that smokestack looking thing. And did you see how the yellow dome had holes on top? There's a staircase inside that goes to a lobby. Because back in 1929 when that was built, helicopters hadn't been invented yet, and also the Hindenburg disaster hadn't happened yet. So dirigibles were a popular means of transportation if you were wealthy enough to afford it. Here's the thing though, they tried to attach a blimp to the top of that building and let people off, but it was windy and the blimp was swaying around too much. The people on board said, this is terrifying, just please put us on the ground. So, cool idea, but never actually panned out. Another one of Chicago's most iconic buildings here, sort of to the right, with the Clock Tower. This is the Wrigley Building, which is, as of this year, is 100 years old, 1921. It was designed by Graham Anderson, Probst and White, who are some of the most prolific architects of the early 20th century here. And it was built, of course, by the same Wrigley who made his fortune selling chewing gum, and also built Wrigley Field, where the Cubs play baseball. The Wrigley Building is covered in these very intricately carved, very pretty terracotta tiles with all these etchings in them, which are pretty to look at, but they're delicate, and when they want to clean the Wrigley Building, they can't power wash it because it would ruin the patterns on the tiles, so they pretty much have to scrub it by hand. Oof. Now coming up on the right here, this is the second tallest building in Chicago at 1,389 feet, 98 floors. Like many others, it's part hotel, part condominium. I can't remember the name of it. It's like right there. I don't know how to read, so it's hard. I think it's the Trump Tower. I'm not sure, but it might be the Trump Tower. As you look up at the Trump Tower, oh my goodness, look at that. They're washing the windows. See those guys in the scaffolding up there? Whew. How'd you like to do that for a living? Yeah. The Trump Tower bears a strong resemblance to the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is the world's tallest building right now. And that's because they were actually designed by the same architect. A guy named Adrian Smith designed both the Trump Tower and the Burj Khalifa and a whole bunch of other buildings around the world. Now coming up on our right here, we've got these two identical towers. These are called the Marina City Towers. They are residential. They were built between 1964 and 1969. It took them 5 years. But as you can see, the bottom's a marina. You can park a boat. Well, then you can park a car in the parking garage. The architect who designed these was a guy named Bertrand Goldberg, and he wanted it to look like rose petals were falling on you from heaven, which, most people see corn cobs or the Jetsons' house. As you look up at the parking garages, you'll be relieved to know that only 2 cars have ever fallen off and landed in the river since 1964. Not bad. I'm pulling your leg a little bit. Both times were on purpose. One time they launched a car from the parking garage into the river was for a car chase in a Steve McQueen movie from 1981 called The Hunter. The other time they launched a car in the river off that parking garage was for an Allstate insurance commercial from 2008. Both those clips are on YouTube if you want to look them up. It's pretty cool. It's worth checking out. Now, coming up on the right, we've got this old prairie-style brick building, which is called the Reed Murdoch Building. Reed Murdoch used to be a canned goods provider, manufacturer. As you go past it, look closely. The clock tower part is not in the center. Look to there's more building to the right of the clock than there is to the left. You see how the clock is not centered? If you're OCD, this is very annoying for you, and I'm sorry. The building used to be symmetrical on both sides of the clock tower part. But in 1920, when that building was only 7 years old, Chicago wanted to build this bridge, Lasalle Street, and extend Lasalle Street to the north of the river. And they said, hey, your building is kind of in the way of our road. So they actually made them tear down part of the building and move it over. And then once they did that, they weren't going to try to also move the clock tower part, because that would have been even more of a pain in the butt. Now coming up on the right, we have a very huge building. It's the biggest building that we're going to pass by in terms of how much ground space it takes up. This is called Merchandise Mart. It's 4.2 million square feet of mostly retail. There's some corporate offices in there, and there's a radio station that broadcasts out of here, but mostly it's stores. It's like a giant mall, hence the name Merchandise Mart. Those 8 busts, those heads facing the building that kind of look like giant Pez dispensers, are different important businessmen of yesteryear, like Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, Frank Woolworth. Merchandise Mart is so big it actually had its own zip code up until 2008. It changed it and it doesn't anymore. And it was the biggest building in the world from 1930 when it was built up until 1943 when the Pentagon was built in Washington, D.C. and surpassed it. They're building more, this is going to be more condominiums. My understanding is when this building's finished, it's going to look pretty much exactly like the one right next door to it. Now, we're coming to a fork in the river here called Wolf Point. Off to the right, there's the north branch. To the left, we're going to go down the south branch. These two blue, shiny office buildings in front of us are brand new. They're 2 years old. They finished them 2 years ago. The one on the right is called River Point Tower, and look, you can see our reflection in it. And that red statue that's swirly is called Constellation by an architect and artist named Santiago Calatrava. He's from Spain. River Point Tower, it's a very pretty building, but I also think it kind of looks like a giant Hot Pocket a little bit. See that? A little bit. Then there's 150 North Riverside Plaza, which is this one coming up on our right here, which to me is the most terrifying building that we're going to pass by on this boat ride, because look at how skinny it gets at the bottom. The base of the building is very skinny compared to the rest, which doesn't seem like it should. It looks like it's going to fall over to me, you know what I mean? Those diagonal beams where we can once again see our reflection, those will hold up most of the weight of the building, those cantilever trusses. And you cannot see this from down here, but in the middle of the building near the top, there's 120,000 gallons of water in a bunch of tanks that hang from the ceiling, like pendulums that are basically counterweights. So if the wind makes the building sway one way, the pendulums sway the other way and balance the building, which that doesn't seem like it would work to me, but see what I do for a living. I'm not an engineer. I'm a tour guide, so whatever they did, the building's been standing there for 2 years and hasn't fallen over, so yet. Yeah, so good on them. Boeing Aircraft's headquarters is on the right. I'll talk a little bit more about the Boeing building when we come back the other way, because we are going to turn around in just a little bit here. But right now I want to focus on the left at the Opera House, the Civic Opera Building, also known as the Lyric Opera, built in 1928. And as you go past it, notice it looks like a giant chair. So the tall part is the backrest. You've got armrests on either side. That gray metal box would be a very awkward butt pillow, I guess. That's actually on purpose. That's supposed to look like a chair. More specifically, a throne. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is, well, the guy who built this was a railroad magnate tycoon from 100 years ago named Samuel Insull. And he owned all the land over here to our right. This is all his land, and fairly soon you'll be able to look underground and see a bunch of trains. Samuel Insull used to own all these railroads out to the west. So when he built the Opera House, he was saying, this is my railroad empire spanning westward, and the Opera House is my throne, looking out across my kingdom. So my giant, the Opera House is my throne, looking at my railroad kingdom. And look, there's a train right there. The other reason it looks like a throne is because Samuel's wife was an aspiring opera singer who wanted to be famous in New York City on Broadway. When the critics in New York didn't think that her opera singing was very good, so she kind of got rejected from the New York opera scene. So Samuel said, hey, don't worry about New York, babe. Here's your own opera house in Chicago. So keep in mind New York's that way. So his saying, his chair's facing away from New York, as if to say, you didn't like my wife's opera singing? I'm turning my back on you in New York in my giant opera chair, and I'm going to look at my trains instead. There's the tallest building in Chicago. I'll talk about that in a sec, but real quick, who's seen Batman the Dark Knight? Okay. You know the scene in the beginning where they wore those clown masks and they robbed the bank and they zip lined from one building to the other? That was filmed right here. That green building with the little curve in it is the building they zipline off of, and the building one further down is the bank they robbed. That's actually Chicago's old post office. They just pretend it's a bank in the movie. But yes, here is the tallest building in Chicago. From 1973 to 1998, this was the tallest building in the world. At 1,451 feet to the top of the roof, 1,729 feet to the top of the antenna. The name on the sign out front says Willis, but it's pronounced Sears. It's weird how that works. If you look up top there, you see there's 4 balconies sticking out. There are people standing on those glass floors looking straight down at us as we look straight up at them. I'm sure they can totally see you waving. Probably about as well as we can see them waving. There used to be 5. That's a lie. I made that up. Have I done it? I've done it, yeah. It's pretty cool. I went with my family a few years ago, and I think I got on my dad's nerves because I jumped up and down on it, and he's like, please don't do that. I'm that guy. But yeah, so I should clarify that it is technically the Willis Tower now, because Willis Insurance bought the building from Sears and changed the name back in 2009. But if you grew up here like I did, everyone still calls it the Sears Tower. It's not the tallest building in the world anymore. It's still the tallest building in Chicago, but it still does hold a record that I'm rather proud of. Folks, the Sears Tower has the highest bathroom in the Western Hemisphere. USA, USA. That's right. So, a couple things here. Well, this old brick building with the clock, that was originally a warehouse for a long time. It was built in 1917, and now you see there's that thing that says GoGo, which is an airplane Wi-Fi provider that bought the building a few years ago. But look to the left. There's another old building that's partially covered in ivy. It's 2 North Riverside Plaza, which used to be the Daily Newspaper building, which is a long since out of business Chicago newspaper. 2 North Riverside Plaza was built the same year as the Opera House. Both these buildings, on both sides of us, were both built in 1928. And 2 North Riverside Plaza was the first building built over the train tracks. Those underground train tracks that we saw, they're not actually underground. Really, all the buildings were built above them. And that being said, a lot of these buildings have weird structural quirks to accommodate the railroad underneath. So if you look up at the Boeing building, you see how it's got these like gray trestles, those girders on the roof? Those actually hold up the middle of the building from the top. So I'll explain it like this. All of the load-bearing pillars on the Boeing building that connect to the ground are either all the way in the wall closest to us in the river, or on the complete opposite side, furthest from the river. They go from the ground up to those trestles on the roof, which hold up the middle of the building from the top, so that the trains can go underneath and the foundation doesn't interfere with the railroad. It's kind of crazy that they had to do that, you know. Now, I'm sure you've noticed, we've gone under a lot of bridges on this boat right here today. And if you haven't noticed that, then I don't know what you've been looking at this whole time, because it's hard to miss. But if you're wondering, do they open? Yes. Yes, they do. They still do. All of these are drawbridges. Well, technically they're train bascule bridges, but Chicago has more moving bridges than any other city in the entire world. We've got 43 of them altogether, and on this boat ride we're only going underneath 16 of them, so not even half. It's not that often that they do it. It's usually if people who own sailboats want to take their sailboats out to the lake in the summertime, so in the springtime they'll open up the bridges for large groups of sailboats to go through. And then when they want to take their sailboats off the lake in the fall, they'll come through in a big group and open up all the bridges for them. Oh, There's one up, no, it's nice. You're pointing at it. There's one up right there. Check it out. That bridge has been up for 21 years. Yeah. That bridge has been up for 21 years. It's the Kinsey Street Railroad Bridge, which in the year 2000, they rerouted the railroad and they didn't need trains to cross it anymore, so it was cheaper and easier just to leave it up. That actually was the biggest moving bridge in the world when it was constructed in 1906. But yes, they didn't need the trains to cross it anymore, and it was cheaper and easier just to leave it up, so they did. Who here has seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Oh, quite a few of you. Good. It's a good movie. Good Chicago movie. This green building on the right here, which is the New Veen Building. New Veen is an investment firm. This was Ferris Bueller's dad's office building in the movie. They only show it for a second. It's just a real quick shot, like here's where he works, and then they cut to him in his office. Here's the thing, though. Y'all remember that scene where, like, there's the parade and everyone's dancing and singing Twist and Shout, and Ferris Bueller's dad looks out the window of his office and almost sees Ferris skipping school? That parade was filmed 3 blocks that way on Dearborn. So Ferris's dad looks out the window of this office building and sees a parade that's happening 3 blocks that way. It's not geographically possible, but whatever, who cares? It's still a fun movie. All right. Got some traffic here. So this building on the right, 225 West Wacker, was actually designed by the same architecture firm as the new Veen Building. Both were designed by an architecture firm called Peterson Fox. And the top of this building is supposed to look like the entrance to Navy Pier. The one straight to the right there, you see that? And then the one next door, it's actually 2 buildings, but they're so close together they might as well be one building. It's weird. And they were only built a year apart. The one with the 2 columns was built in 1927. The one on the left that's a little bit bigger was built in 1928. And they don't have a name. It's just 105 West Wacker, or I'm sorry, 205 West Wacker, 211 West Wacker. It's weird. Then we have the Builders Building straight to the right. Part of it was built in 1926, part of it was built in 1986. Can you tell which part is which? It's pretty easy. They don't really match. Then really old, nice Art Deco skyscraper, the Lasalle Wacker Building, because it's on the corner of Lasalle and Wacker. It was built in 1930, and it's got a light on top that lights up at night. That white sort of weird stick thing is a really cool light that they light up at night. They don't light it up as bright as they used to, though, because this blue shiny building right next door was built in 2006 and it's condos. So people in the condos complained about the light from the LaSalle Wacker Building. Just kind of, I think that's kind of dumb, because the LaSalle Wacker Building was there first, you know. Then you have United Airlines headquarters. That's this building here on the right, which once again has scaffolding up there. I don't know, they're probably washing the windows. Then next to that is 55 Wacker Drive. It's a bank. It's kind of ugly, and I honestly don't have a lot to say about it. You know, it was built in 1966. Then the dark gray building is the Burnett Building. You may not know the name Leo Burnett, but he's the guy who came up with Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Pillsbury Doughboy, Marlboro Man, Jolly Green Giant, a whole bunch of others. He passed away a long time ago, but his company still exists right here. But I want to skip ahead a little bit to this skyscraper in front of us and slightly to the right. It's dark green and it has a gold roof. That's real 24 karat gold up there on top of that. It's like wallpaper thin, but still, it's real 24 karat gold. It's called the Carbide and Carbon Building. They used to be a chemical manufacturing company. Actually, it's a Hard Rock hotel now. But it's supposed to look like an expensive bottle of champagne because it was built in the 1920s. Prohibition was still in effect. And the architects who designed it, the Burnett brothers, said, well, we can't drink legally, but we can make a building that looks like champagne. You see what I'm saying? Speaking of Prohibition, look straight to your right. This old building with a dome on the roof that has that cupola up top with the big windows. In the late 1920s, early 1930s, an office building. And then look, check this out. Where it says London House up on the right, you can see there's people up there. That's a rooftop bar. Pretty good view, not terribly expensive. I mean, it's pricey. Any rooftop bar is going to be somewhat expensive, but it's not terrible. I like it. Next to it is the Mather Tower, that very skinny tower, which is actually the tallest building in Chicago for 2 years, from 1928 to 1930. Then we have Michigan Avenue up ahead of us here, and we have a good view of the Tribune Tower, which is this skyscraper on the left. The top of it kind of looks like a Gothic European cathedral. It's got those flying buttresses. It's a beautiful building. That was built in 1925. And then, of course, the Tribune is one of our newspapers. That's where the Tribune is published. If you get a chance to walk around the outside of the Tribune Tower, it's really cool. There's a bunch of rocks embedded in the side of that building from different places around the world where news is happening. Like there's a chunk of the Berlin Wall embedded in the side. There's several churches and cathedrals from Europe. There's a chunk of the Great Wall of China embedded in the side of that building. The pyramids in Egypt, there's a chunk of the pyramid in there. There's even a chunk of the moon from the moon landing in 1969. Now, I know we're a little bit past it, but Michigan Avenue, the street that we just went under, this is where the landfill starts. Remember earlier I said that after the fire, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, they took all the burnt buildings and pushed it out into the lake, and it became landfill that they put on top of. Everything from Michigan Avenue all the way to the lakeshore is all landfill. So, all of this is landfill. So if this were pre-1871, we would have just gone to the waves coming off this river onto the lake. We'd be on the lake right now. Isn't that crazy to you? All of this is landfill on either side of us. That's why Michigan Avenue is called Michigan Ave, because Lake Michigan used to come all the way up to there. Alright. Now, on the right, there's Wacker Drive once again. Wacker Drive has been next to us this entire time because it follows the river. It's the only street in Chicago that has north, south, east, and west addresses because the river curves around, so does Wacker Drive. Most of the city is built on a grid, which is actually a result of the fire. After the fire, Daniel Burnham was the lead architect and engineer in charge of redesigning Chicago, because since the city burned down, they're like, we have to rebuild it, but this time let's do it with a plan. And it was his idea to make all the streets on a grid. So most of our streets run straight east and west, or straight north and south. There's a couple streets like Milwaukee Avenue that runs like on an angle, northwest to southeast. But before the fire, the city was designed on cow paths, which, I mean, cows are lovely creatures, but they're not the best city planners, so our streets wound around and didn't make a lot of sense. Like, if anyone's ever tried to drive in Boston, it's a very confusing city streetwise. It winds around because that's what the case there. The streets are just built after cow paths, so. But the fire obviously was a horrible thing to happen in Chicago, but that's silver lining. We got to redesign it and make roads that are simple. It's a grid. But yeah, if you look at Wacker Drive, there's 3 levels. The upper level is Upper Wacker, the middle level is Lower Wacker, and the lowest level is Lower Wacker. I don't know what to tell you. There's not Middle Wacker. I know Wacker is a goofy name. Charles Wacker was a German-American architect who helped design the road. Now, we're coming up to Lakeshore Drive here, which this part of Lakeshore Drive right here always makes me remember the blizzard of 2011. Does anybody remember that blizzard 10 years ago? Yeah? Are you from here? Are you from... Okay. Yeah, it's, we get snow here every winter, that's normal. But in 2011, we got hit with this crazy blizzard. It was early February, like right around when the Super Bowl happened. We got a blizzard where we got 6 feet of snow in 24 hours. It was crazy, and the whole city got shut down. Hold on. I know that guy. He's actually also a captain here. It's just a side gig. But yeah, this whole city got snowed in very badly, but in particular, this part of Lakeshore Drive Bridge right here, there's a long stretch where there aren't any off-ramps. So if you're stuck on the upper level of Lakeshore, there's really nowhere for you to go. If you're stuck in traffic, you're stuck in traffic, and you're in it for the long haul. So in 2011, when the blizzard happened, people actually got stuck in their car for a very long time, to the point where police and firemen had to go around on snowmobiles and knock on people's windows and say like, hey, if you sit in your car, you're gonna run out of gas, and then you're gonna run out of heat, and you're gonna freeze. So don't worry about your car. We can come get it later when all this snow melts. It'll be towed at no expense to you, but for now, get out of your car, get in my snowmobile, come with me if you want to live. And I was at home. I was watching the news. I didn't get caught in the blizzard. I was at home. And I was watching the news, and I'll never forget the headline on the TV screen. At the bottom of the screen, it said, "Thousands stranded for hours on LSD." And it took me a minute. Lakeshore Drive. I said, oh, I don't know what those people doing. It's a bad trip, man. Oh yeah, Lakeshore Drive. You can probably guess what this blue house is based on the boats parked out front, but as you can see, there's 2 fireboats. That gray boat's a Coast Guard boat. There's some police boats parked over there. On the other side of the building, there's a helicopter pad. So the Marine Police, Marine Fire Department, and Coast Guard are all headquartered here. So if there's any emergency on the river or the lake, they can be easily dispatched, because remember, right on the other side of that house is the lake. This wall separates the lake and the river. Alright, looks like, oh cool, the locks are opening up for us, and then this boat's going to come out, and we'll get to mosey on in there, get back on the lake, go zip around a little bit. We have a pretty good view of Navy Pier from here. Who's been to Navy Pier before? Hopefully everybody. If you haven't been to Navy Pier, I don't know how you got on this boat without any of us noticing that you just, like, I don't know, swam up and climbed on and dried off really fast. But good job. You should be a spy for a living. Navy Pier, a month ago, had its 105th birthday. Navy Pier first opened July 15th of 1916. So it's 105 years old. It was originally a shipping facility for freight, but then World War I happened, and the U.S. Navy said, hey, we're going to need to use that as a training facility for the U.S. Navy. So that's when it got the name Navy Pier. World War I ended, it went back to being a shipping facility, and then World War II happened, and the U.S. Navy said, actually, we need to use this again as a naval training facility. So it was a U.S. naval training facility in both World Wars, World War I and World War II. After World War II ended, It was actually a college campus for University of Illinois, whose main campus is in Champaign-Urbana, which is a few hours south of here. So Navy Pier got the nickname Champaign on the Rocks. It was a college campus from 1945 to 1965. In 1965, U of I moved out and went to their campus that they're currently at, which is a little bit west of here, kind of by where the highways meet, where like 90, 94 meets up with 290. In the 70s and 80s, Navy Pier was kind of a desolate place. They weren't really using it for much of anything. They'd throw the occasional rock concert here. There's a ballroom at the end. But for the most part, it was just kind of vacant. It wasn't until 1994 that the city remodeled it and it became the fun tourist attraction that it is today. And Sea Dog opened up here in 1996. Here's the thing, though. Navy Pier wasn't built for the Navy. Remember that. It was originally just a shipping facility. So when it was first built, it wasn't called Navy Pier. And Navy Pier's original name is very exciting. You ready for this? Its original name was Municipal Pier Number 2. Here's the great thing about that. There is no Municipal Pier Number 1. Never was. Never happened. Where's my third graders? Where's my fifth graders? So I guess the city planners must have been like, all right guys, so we're thinking of building a couple municipal piers over there, but we're going to start with the second one first, then work our way back to the first one. Sounds good, Bob? Sure thing. Sounds good, Todd. You know how we all talk here. How we all talk just like that. I do know guys that actually do talk like that, but well, the real reason, they actually were planning on building multiple piers just like this, multiple shipping piers, and originally the plan was for maybe 3 to 5 of them, and they were going to go in order north to south. So pier number 1 would have been north of here, this would have been 2, number 3 would have been a little over to the south to a right, and then if there was a 4th one, it would have been further south. So it's just going to go in order north to south, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But the funding wasn't there, the demand wasn't there, because rather than being the shipping hub that we thought we were going to be, we instead sort of became the railroad hub of the country. So that money went into railroad infrastructure rather than shipping infrastructure. So only one of those 5 piers was built, number 2. But Navy Pier's got a way better ring to it anyway. Do I have an accent to you guys? Alright. Some people say I do. I do the Midwest thing. I know where you, like, the white tent. Oh, that's a concert pavilion. Yeah, there's a concert stadium up under that white tent there to the right of the Ferris wheel. I saw Weird Al perform there in 1995. I was a kid. It was a good time. But no, this right here, I was sort of doing it a little bit earlier. This is like the blue collar, stereotypical Chicago guy accent, which is I do know guys that actually talk like this. Like there's a bar where I host karaoke near my apartment, and I'm the only guy that works there that doesn't talk like this. So same thing as before, guys. If you're sitting on the right side, make sure to just keep all your limbs inside the railing, because it's the side that's going to rub up against the wall. But you hear a guy talking like this, chances are he's probably got a Polish, Irish, or Italian last name, and he probably knows how to work on cars, at least a little bit though. Nothing new or foreign though. Give this guy like a 72 Chevy Nova with a 350 in it, no problem. He's got it. Yeah, you don't say, well, first of all, you add extra A's to words. You get real nasally, like hot dog, sausage, sausage, Sasquatch, Sam Squanch. And the other thing is, you don't say THs in words, so replace the TH with a T or with a D. Like, look at those guys over there. There's like 3 of those guys over there. A couple 2-3 guys over there. Look at those guys over there. Hey Bob, let's take your brother Tommy's Camaro over to Portillo's. Got a couple 2-3 hot dogs, maybe some Polish sausage and Italian beef. That's the other thing. Everyone thinks Chicago food, if you're not from here, is like Chicago hot dog is well known. The deep dish pizza is very well known. Yeah, give it a try while you're here. It's worth trying out. But the one that somehow gets overlooked or is less well known is Italian beef sandwiches. I see some of you are nodding your heads. Yeah, that's the other one you got to try if you're here. You can order it with hot peppers if you like spicy food, or sweet peppers if you don't. Hot peppers called giardiniera. We're not big on health food here, I guess. We like our cheesy, meaty, artery-clogging food because we got cold winters. Gotta get that belly fat going, clog up those arteries, make it through the winter. Eating vegan in Chicago, I guess, would just be eating a vegan. I don't know. Does anybody have any questions, by the way? Any building I didn't talk about, or any historical Chicago thing you're curious about? The building across from Ferris Bueller's dad's office building, that's just, it's going to be condos. It's going to look pretty much exactly like that other one. That guy had the accent, did you? Recreational boaters, do not go any further. That voice you just heard was up from that tower there. But yeah, that's the building you're talking about is just going to look pretty much exactly like the one that was right next to it. Expensive condos.